Today, we have a very special guest, a leader who is at the operational heart of India's electric vehicle revolution. I'm thrilled to welcome Sanjeev Singh, a key figure in the leadership team at Ather Energy. Sanjeev brings with him a wealth of experience in leading large scale operations and has been instrumental in incredible growth story. For those who may not know, Ather Energy is not just a manufacturer of electric scooters. It's a company that is redefining urban mobility in India with its smart, connected, and sustainable solutions. From their cutting edge manufacturing facilities to their expansive fast charging network, Ather is building an entire ecosystem for the future of transportation. Sanjeev, it's an absolute pleasure to have you with us today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Satya. Thank you. Pleasure.
Sanjeev, you have a very rich background in leading large scale operations. Could you share with us your professional journey and what inspired you to join Ather Energy, a company that is at the forefront of electric mobility revolution in India?
Yeah, so I think after passing out from IIT Kharagpur, I did mechanical engineering from there. I started working with Tata Motors as a graduate engineer trainee, and post that worked with various companies for Limited, Genpact, Bosch for almost a decade, and then moved to Ather. Over last 20 years, I've worked in many functions, led many functions, ranging from core manufacturing operations to doing consulting, doing sales. I also did sales for a bit in between in Southeast Asia. So I think the highlight is that I try to not confine myself to one sort of, let's say, career which is only dig deeper into one topic and take risks, do something which you have never done in the past. And I think that is something which also was one of the reasons how I ended up joining Ather, right? I mean, what attracted me to Ather was one, an opportunity to do something which has not been done so far in the past, not only by me, but also by any means, any company, right? So if you look at having a hardware startup in India, right, and scale it up and having an opportunity to scale it up to the level that we have scaled up now is something which is a very unique opportunity. Second, if you look at again how Indian industry has shaped up in the past, right? Led by manufacturing, but led mostly by manufacturing of products, where technology came broadly from a lot of them came from outside, right? Or IT services where the dependence essentially was a lot also on the arbitrage that we could get from the people that we deployed, right? And in this case, at least there was an opportunity. There is a company which was building something from scratch, a technology which is, you can say at the cutting edge, not only keeping India in mind, but the world as a stage in mind, right? So I think the factors that there is an opportunity to do something different, contribute in scale up of that industry which has come so far. And also I think one of the most important aspects also at a senior level when you join, it's not a marriage of competencies and opportunities, but it's a marriage of the values, right? And at some point I will look at whether what you hold dear as a very strong value system for yourself, is there an alignment that the organization also holds? Unfortunately for me, I think a lot of the value systems, whether it's thinking from first principles, right, not trying to copy something that people have already done, but every problem try to solve it, from first principles, empowering people to do and achieve what they can. So I think a lot of those matches in terms of what I prefer to work with naturally was available at Ather. So I think it's a marriage of, I would say, a value system that I hold very dear to myself that I could find also with the organization. So there are multiple aspects, a few of them, as I mentioned, Satya.
Okay, that's very good to know, like a 360-degree product view, a 360-degree career view, and then taking risks as well as getting married to the value and then matchmaking with that. That's an interesting journey to hear from you. Now, going a little bit over from your personal journey to Ather. Ather has seen an impressive growth with a 50% year-on-year revenue jump in, I think it's in Q3 FY26, and the production of over 5 lakh scooters from your Tamil Nadu plant. As a leader with expertise in scaling operation, what have been the biggest challenge and learning in managing this rapid expansion, especially in a fast evolving industry like electric vehicle?
So I mean, there are two broad. I mean, if I look at the challenges, right, there are two broad areas that we look at it from, right. So one is in general the challenge that any scale, kind of brings, right. When you practically double your headcount within a span of a year, the biggest challenge that you encounter is will you be able to hold? I spoke about value system in my previous answer, right? And if you look at a lot of the value system gets imbibed by people as a habit, and that becomes culture of the org, right? And we again at Aether hold the culture aspect of things very dear, because we believe we were not only, and I think when Tarun and Swapnil started the company, I think their vision was not only to build a scooter or a product. I think their larger vision was also to build an organization, right? And building the right culture again sits at the core of building a resilient organization. From that perspective, I think one of the biggest challenges when you scale up, right? When you scale up and you have to double your headcount within a span of a year, how do you ensure that you are not only bringing expectations from the people around the technicalities of the work, but also around what's the value system, what's the culture we have in the organization, and how do we ensure that also gets kind of passed on to a huge set. So I mean, when you add your strength by 10-20%, doing that is easier. When you double your headcount, doing that is a big challenge, and hence much more effort. So I would say the first challenge was in scaling this up. How do we ensure that we don't lose something that we hold very dear, which is the ways of work that we have, which is the culture that we have, which is the empowerment that I spoke about in the past as well. So I think that was challenge number one, which took in a lot of effort to ensure that we continuously engage with people, to ensure we emphasize enough on that. The second, I think, again, it's a challenge that is very, very unique to factories, very, very unique to manufacturing. I think this is something we have seen, right, in the past, how the workforce in general tendency to move towards jobs which seem more comfortable, right? I mean, why should someone hassle a bit at the factory when they can work, comfortably out of an office space where work from home, for example, is much easier to be managed. Life is much more comfortable. So life at factory in general is something which is considered a little difficult, which is not completely, I would say, wrong, but that rigor, that discipline is something which is needed, right? And the newer generation coming out, how much value essentially gets associated with the work at factory, where you kind of bring something out and you see that. And I think that's again something where we worked a lot to talk about, hey, it's not a traditional shop floor where your job is to kind of only manage people and get the products out, but it's also a platform where you can innovate. Not all innovation happens only, let's say, in R&D. There is a lot of innovation which India has been doing a lot traditionally, as well as a new age company is doing even more, can happen at the shop floor. So I think we provided a lot of platform there in terms of how do we innovate, not only in terms of lean practices, also people practices, technology practices, developing a complete smart factory. So I think a lot of those is what we have to do. But if I had to summarize two biggest challenge, one, how do we hold our culture, kind of firm when we add huge number of people? And second, how do we ensure that we are able to motivate people to work on the shop floor and not only limit themselves to, kind of, yeah, more comfortable office, kind of work? I would say these are the two key challenges that I feel we faced.
Yeah, I think holding on to a value centric and culture building organization at the same time, well, there are so many distractions around of how comfortable you can do the same job, but getting on the shop floor and keeping them motivated. Definitely, we could resonate with that. Now, from a challenge and a learning perspective, for any company, building a people-centric factory is kind of a unique thing because it poses different challenges for different sets of industries. So you have written about the importance of building belongingness on the shop floor.
Yeah.
And in these days of work from home and treating inclusion as a muscle rather than as a metric, right? You had written about building belongingness. How have you applied these principles at Aether to foster a positive and an inclusive workplace culture, and what impact has had this on your teams?
Yeah. So I mean, if you look at it, and why I mentioned that it's a muscle that we need to build rather than kind of measuring with a metric. That's something that we look at in many aspects, right? The problem with the metric, right? The moment there is a metric, you forget the intent and look at, did I or did I not achieve? And there are many ways you can achieve the metric without having kind of understood the underlying impact that it can create, and hence making it sustainable. Like, you keep moving from metric to metric, it may not be sustainable, right? the biggest, if you look at, if you talk about it from the perspective of it being a big change that we had to bring in at the shop floor, there are three aspects, right? One is there enough sponsorship? And what I mean by that is not in terms of saying, hey, are we willing to put extra money for that, right? Because if you go and talk to a production head on the shop floor to say, hey, there is an initiative, but it'll cost you more money, returns are not guaranteed, you're sure to get a pushback to say, hey, why are you even asking me to do this, right? So I think a sponsorship, when I say, it's not about asking people to put money or you putting money and resources on that, but the true job of a sponsor to say, am I able to explain the why, right? Are we able to spend enough time in showing the true north? And if you look at one of the value system we carry as an org, is know your true north. Of the few that we have, one of the top that we, or one of the first that we have, is know your true north. And I think that's the job of a sponsor, true job of a sponsor, to say, hey, are you able to explain why is it important? Why should we as an org do it? What is the and I think we take pride again in kind of spending enough time in giving context to people, explaining the why, again coming from first principle, not like a control driven management approach to say, this target I've given you, and then this is a metric, you have to achieve it next year. The job that we take on ourselves is to say, hey, if this is important, if I understand, how do I explain the why of it to the larger people? Because once that is done, the job is much easier, where people start to find ways to do it. And hence it becomes a part of, let's say, the whole culture again back, right? So I think the biggest effort was, I think, taken into explaining why is it important. And once that was overcome, right, the second aspect was, once people are to do it, but how do I do it, right? And that's where you enable people by understanding which are the challenges that we will face and making them capable of handling, right? And one of the examples that I can take is, it's not about knowing the method to say, hey, if I have to make it inclusive, I have to do ABC. If we understand, inclusion is not only about gender diversity. Inclusion is not only about, let's say, employing people from PWD community on the shop floor. All of this is something that we have done, but the larger picture of inclusion is, are you inclusive also about thought processes? So how do you take it to the higher level to say, hey, it's inclusion not only of people, inclusion of thought you might have. And the moment I think this point is understood, that we should be okay and we should be encouraging inclusion of thoughts, which means there are many different people with many different, let's say, backgrounds, and hence different thoughts, everything else. And different thoughts come because of different gender, different thought comes because of different ability, different thought comes because of different reasons you come from. So I think the moment it's understood that we have to be inclusive in thought process, which means we have to let people express their thoughts and take into account and be sensitive about it. I think in general, inclusivity, in my opinion, is something which is taken care, because then it's a question. I have understood why is inclusion important. I have understood it starts from inclusion, and if I'm able to accommodate different thoughts in my way of work, I will be able to work sensitively with people who come from different backgrounds and hence bring different thoughts, right? So I think the focus from my side was, how do we ensure that we work at a higher order of inclusion, which is inclusion of thought, which essentially can drive and then it was a matter of basic, I would say, ability, capability building to ensure that we are also able to be sensitive about it. And I think our teams did a fantastic job post that. And at our factory, we have all sorts of inclusion that we're very proud of, right from regional inclusion to people from PWD background working at a factory, and a big part of our workforce coming from, is female, right? So I think all sorts of inclusion, most important inclusion of thought, is what we focused on. Where where
Beautifully,
even a, where even a junior member of the team, right, whether it's a new apprentice or let's say a new engineer, feels free to express his or her thoughts, and thereby is willing and eager to contribute.
beautiful. I mean, I heard it in a way like diversity of workforce builds great teams. Diversity of thoughts bring about innovation, and the why is known, and you are able to do it, get things done. Great way to kind of hear that out. Just we'll go a little faster because the road is long towards sustainability. In your article, the living road or the long road to sustainability, You touched upon initiatives of Ather on EHSS team. Beyond the electric vehicle themselves, how Ather is embedding sustainability into its core operations and supply chains, and what's your long-term vision for the company environmental impacts?
Yeah. So I think I'll talk a little bit about sustainability from a broader angle. If you look at what I also mentioned in the article, I think we treat sustainability not only from environmental sustainability perspective, but also people sustainability perspective, right? And if you look at it from that perspective, and I'll talk about the initiatives we've taken on the environmental sustainability as well. But I think we say, hey, it's essentially sustainability is a much larger topic and not limited to environment. I mean, we are also talking about environment from the aspect of a human, right? I mean, how do we, how do we, how do we retain the environmental sustainable to essentially ensure that human beings and the species, kind of have a better life, right? And it all originates from there. And hence we say it's also people sustainability is a larger topic, and a lot of initiatives with respect to community engagement. I mean, even though, let's say, as a company, since we are not yet profit making, we don't mandatorily have to spend money on CSR. We say no, we are present in a community, we are using the resources, and hence it's our responsibility to understand the needs of the community and do something about it, right? So we took a lot of initiatives from the perspective of engaging with the local community. Employees as a community again is very important, and if you look at their policies, they're very employee friendly, right? And we take the welfare and upliftment in general, competence building of employees very seriously. So I just want to touch upon these two aspects of sustainability as well before I talk about environmental sustainability, because we often talk about environmental sustainability but miss out the larger part of the people sustainability aspect of it. As far as environmental sustainability is concerned, I think we're doing a lot of stuff that I would say everyone is doing. I would not say we're the only ones who is doing that. Be it moving towards green energy, we have installed solar power plants in our factory. Moving towards, let's say, more sustainable. Let's say, I mean, I say more sustainable. How do we reduce our, let's say, carbon footprint, whether it's scope 1, 2, 3, and which is something which is the largest focus that every org has. We have also made our strides in those areas, reducing fossil fuel consumption, moving more towards solar, putting up a Miyawaki forest that we did recently to ensure that, kind of we also create a kind of carbon sink. Working with our partners, right? I mean, there are two aspects of it. One is what do we do in our operations? And I mentioned some of the initiatives that we took into our operations. For example, our plant is also liquid discharge free plant, right? So a lot of those things. But more importantly, how do we work with our larger partners, both on the supply side as well as on retail side, to ensure that they also, kind of do their part, and we keep, let's say, the carbon footprint and CO2 emissions as one of the key criteria also in the evaluation of our partners before we onboard them, right? So, and we work with them. So I think a lot of initiatives across the value chain, not only limited to our core operations. What we have also started, or what we have also always done, and we are looking to do more and more there, is how do we build sustainability in the product? And I'm not talking about, since our vehicle is electric, is naturally sustainable. I'm also talking about the kind of material that we use. Are we using material which is very energy intense to produce, or is it so essentially using the principles of reduce, reuse, and reduce, recycle, and reuse? We're not only talking about it on the factory floor, but how do we look at also choosing the right material which is recycled or recyclable? So I think a lot of initiatives across the value chain, including engineering, is what I would say, Satya, has been our focus.
That's great to hear. Not just the product, but also the energy sources and stuff like that. It's great to hear. Just beyond the scooters, Ather is just not selling scooters. It's building an entire ecosystem with the Ather grid, the connected vehicle technology and smart accessories. So how do you see this integrated approach differentiating Ather from its competitor, and what role does the operations play in ensuring a seamless customer experience across all these touch points?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you look at the philosophy that we follow at Ather, right? I mean, we don't say we build products or we build services, right? I mean, what we're very proud of is, of course, that is something that we do, but the larger picture that we have in mind is building magical experiences, right? And anything and everything that we do with respect to our product or the ecosystem is driven by customer experience, and customer experiencing or customer having, let's say, magical. And why we use the word magical, your the magical experience comes from the wow factor, right? I mean, does the customer get everything that he or she expected and beyond, right? And if you look at EV as a segment, right, and we're talking about it not be only being a product which will take you from a point A to point B, which an ICE can also do, or which any other mode of transport can also do. It's about the experience that you have while you're moving from point A to point B. And that is where the entire ecosystem, whether it's charging infra, as you mentioned, or the entire smart merchandise that we're talking about, including Hello, for example, which enables a much better voice, on the scooter, and a much better experience of how you can, either listen to music, or you can, give direction to your scooter, or as you mentioned, host of features that we roll out from a software side, Ether Stack, how it enables the users, not only the users who are buying our new scooters, but through OTA, we push out a lot of new features to our existing and old customers as well, essentially to enhance their experience. And I think all of this combined is what we say has delivered a many magical experiences to our customers. And hence the focus is on the larger ecosystem, not only in the product, because we strongly believe that all combined is where the value becomes not only incremental but exponentially high as far as experience goes. From an ops team perspective, I think if we ensure that we are not letting a defective, or let's say we are not letting a product go with any glitch from the factory, right, to ensure that the if you look at, right, I mean, the customer gets a product when we promise that we have built magical experience in the product from engineering side, but it doesn't work in the first go, the experience is poor, forget about magical, right? So I think most of it from the operations team side, how do we ensure that the customers have the right experience as it is intended by the product and the services? How do we ensure that we live up to that is something which is the biggest task that we essentially take on to ourselves.
Yeah. So it's great way to kind of, just not look at a product, look at an ecosystem, but the customer amidst getting that wow experience, that becomes the ultimate driver when you're on a long road.
Yeah.
The future of mobility and innovation specifically, from your engagement with advancements like humanoid robotics to Ather's own continuous innovation with OTA updates and new product lines like the Rizas, it's clear you have an eye on the future, right? And what emerging technologies or trends do you believe will have the most significant impact on the future urban mobility? And how is Ather preparing to lead that change?
So if you look at, I mean, again, there are many aspects of technology which are shaping, let's say, mobility today, right? I mean, if you look at convenience, for example, I mean, when there was a time where you had to wait for 5 years to get a scooter, you will not talk about is the scooter convenient and comfortable. Today, when you have so many options available, you look at convenience, and convenience not only from the perspective of basic comfort in terms of ergonomics that I'm talking about, convenience also in terms of how does it help me move better. And if you look at in terms of mobility, right, and there are few aspects which, what is the effort of me in navigating from point A to point B? Two-wheeler is, essentially always has to be dynamically balanced with the person. It's an effort, right? There is a lot of technological work. There's a lot of tech work happening around how do we make the effort of riding lower and lower, right? And I'm not talking about autonomous riding only. I mean, that's probably the pinnacle where you don't have to even hold. But essentially, in that journey, right, how are you reducing the effort of a rider while the rider is moving from point A to point B? That's a big piece of tech work that's happening around, which will make the ride much more convenient. There's a lot of tech work happening around, how do we make vehicles more and more safer, and how do you explore the frontiers of safety that the consumers even are not thinking about it, right? And host of kind of innovation around technology happening there, right? How do you look at different kind of braking systems, and we introduced a feature of magic twist in our scooter where you reduce the dependence on brakes to kind of give. So I think there is a lot of technology getting kind of explored around safety. And I think lastly, a lot around battery technology, right? And whether it's from the current cell chemistry moving to solid state battery moving. So there is a lot of tech work happening around what's the right chemistry, how is the chemistry evolving, what's the right shape and size of the cells that we can use. And that is something that we always keep an eye on, and we continue to work. The last piece of the puzzle is the work happening around the entire, let's say, firmware software piece of it, right? Essentially, the ability today that electric vehicles have, which, let's say, the ICE competitors do not have, come a lot from what you can do through a software, through an algorithm today, than what you can do on an ICE vehicle, right? So I think a lot of, whether it's about battery management system or about, let's say, motor controllers, a lot of work around how do you get the algorithms right to ensure that you're able to again provide the right experience and magical experience to the customer. And I mean, I can't mention specifically what technologies we are working on for confidentiality reasons, but I can tell you that we have our eyes and on all the tech that we feel is right for the future to be worked upon, right from how do we make the right convenient, as I mentioned in the beginning, to how do we, kind of keep exploring different battery tech and softwares and algorithms. I think the whole gamut of right from hardware to software is what we are deeply engaged in.
So all the way from convenience to the security, from humanware to software to hardware, everything has an open
Absolutely.
opportunity to innovate and contributing towards the future of mobility. That's a great to look at all the aspects of where the innovation can come from. Now, slightly shifting gears, and we need to be a little faster with our ride right now. Ather recently celebrated a milestone with its first ever customer upgrading their scooter after 8 years. This speaks volume about the brand loyalty. In your view, what are all the key ingredients in building such a strong customer relationship, and how does this affect your long-term perspective, influence on your operational strategies?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not a brand expert, but I can try to bring in my perspective on this topic. I mean, if you look at Ather as an org, what we believe in is it's a relationship that is something which brings, let's say, brand loyalty from a customer. I mean, one of the aspects that I'm talking about. And that relationship doesn't come only from transactions, but the experience of those transactions, right, is something which cumulatively builds the relationship aspect of it, right? And then the brand loyalty aspect of it. And hence our focus is always on how do we ensure that every transaction, whether it's taking a test ride or kind of purchase experience, to the final product experience that the customer has, and finally the experience that the customer has and the service aspect. So I think our focus has been a lot on how do we ensure that it's not only a very solid built quality product that the customer is getting, but if there are, kind of service requirements which come time to time, how do the customers also get a flawless service, right? And an experience where they can rely, yeah, they can rely on the product to say, if I made a purchase, it will give me the value for which I bought it. And when I go in the next step of the journey, right, I'll again get it back the way I expect. So I think a lot of brand equity that we have on is through the hard work in engineering, in manufacturing, and of course in the entire sales and service setup to ensure that we provide the customer with a solid product. I mean, if you look at one of the aspects that we say, we don't talk about having the maximum number of features in our scooter, right? And that's not something we ever talk about. But if we have a feature, you can be rest assured that it will work the way it is supposed to be. It will give you the experience that it's supposed to be. And the moment, it's a hard work, right? It's not about taking shortcuts to launch as many features as possible as soon as possible, but taking the pain of perfecting each of those, when the customer gets it. And a lot of those is what builds the trust in the brand, which the customer essentially carries. And once the customer has tasted it, a few customers have tasted, a lot of word of mouth that spreads in, hey, no, I mean, oh, you're buying it, yeah, solid product hai. नहीं है, service team अच्छी है, they support a lot, right? Or you keep getting features, they don't tell you something and give you something else, right? So I think it's a lot of, and I'll again link it back to the org culture that I spoke about in the beginning. We like to tell what we do and not kind of tell something that we don't believe in and we don't intend to do. So a lot of that credibility is, in my opinion, what has helped us build the brand equity that we built so far.
Yeah, beyond transaction, but every transaction matters. That's a great way
Absolutely.
to kind of hear that out from you. Finally, we move on to the golden question. I just need your 1 or 2 sentence take on that. Okay. Finally, for our listeners who are aspiring to build a career in the EV industry or in the operations management, what is that one piece of advice you would offer them on your extensive experience and your journey with Ather? energy?
I think it's always the most difficult question to answer because, to be honest, there is no one answer to this, and everyone shares their experience based on what they feel. And in my opinion, if you ask me two things, if I have to say that kind of from an advice perspective, one is I think for everyone who wants to work in an EV industry, I think they just need to keep in mind it's not rocket science, right? If you're someone who believes to work with first principles, if you're someone who would like to question everything that usually happens, right, in a structured way or a legacy way, whatever word you want to choose, that's what is needed, for example, for you to succeed in EV industry, right? It's no rocket science. Same physics applies, same chemistry applies, same maths applies. There's nothing different, right, if you look at from fundamental science perspective. What is, however, needed, and that's something that, in my opinion, the most important aspect of it, how do you not be, kind of a slave of your own experience and learning that you've had in the past, which essentially says, are you willing to be questioned, right? I mean, when I came in, I was questioned, not by my managers and let's say my founders, but more probably from my young engineers to say, why are you saying it to be done this way? Is this the best way? I have an idea. And there, if you become, kind of, and again, a very harsh word, but I still use it, if you become a slave of your own experience and thought, this is what has worked in the past, why it will not work? I think it's something very difficult for you then to work with cutting edge new industries, in this sector. You should be open to unlearn and learn and take risks. And that's these are few things that, in my opinion, has always helped me, and I feel probably can also help a few other people.
That's a great way to say, don't be a slave of your experiences. Take
Yeah.
risks and be ready to be questioned. Great things beyond technology. Sanjeev, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. It's been an incredibly insightful to hear about your journey, your leadership philosophy, and the exciting future of Aether Energy. Your passion for what you do is truly inspiring. To our listeners, if you want to learn more about Aether Energy, you can visit their website at aetherenergy.com. And with that, we'll wrap up this episode of Future Forward. Thank you for tuning in again. Thank you.